I feel like it goes without saying that one of the best parts of Ninjago is without a doubt the characters. We've been given such a unique and diverse roster of characters that without a doubt is going to be someone's favourite no matter how you spin it. They're all iconic, they're all memorable, and they're all fantastic for a different reason. But Dragon's Rising, in my opinion, has presented a very unique problem when it comes to the characters, and a problem where honestly, I don't think there's a way anymore of solving it, because they've attempted near enough every single option that we have had the idea for, and none of them have exactly worked. But as of Season 3 Part 2, I feel like there's officially an issue that needs to be addressed. And honestly, I do find it hilarious because for the most part, I could boil down this entire argument to they wanted to give us too much of a great thing. But the problem is that anything in such a mass quantity can be bad when it comes down to it. And that is ultimately the problem when it comes to Dragon's Rising characters. So let me give you some examples of this, because there are 3 different categories when it comes to the problem, and I feel like there's a way to address all of them without necessarily harming the show. Take the first category for instance, our original set of ninja, our core team, the one that we all grew up and loved. Of course, in Dragon's Rising, a lot of them have taken very much a back seat. Some of them have definitely been getting more love than others, and you can definitely tell who is where. But the problem is that with the abundance of all the new characters, our core 6 have honestly been kind of sidelined in a lot of different ways, and a lot of people are just not exactly pleased with that, and there are specific ninja in particular that people do take issue with. Zane and Cole have very much taken the backseat in Dragon's Rising, and it's mostly just down to the fact that they just haven't had much to do. The thing is that they have had things set up for them, but at the same time, they have been completely sidelined for the most part. And why, you may be asking? Well, simply put, all the other characters are getting more attention. Because there are so many characters to contest with, the thing is that Zane and Cole have just kind of been put by the wayside. Of course, they have their moments, and I am appreciative of that, but the thing is that for the most part, they just get sent off to do something else in the meantime while the actual plot takes place. Dragon's Rising Season 1 Part 1, Cole is not present whatsoever, and Zane is in there for 2 of the episodes. In Season 1 Part 2, Zane is there for the most part, and Cole is in about 3 of the episodes. So Zane is there initially speaking, whereas Cole doesn't get too much at all. But the thing is that both of them have their moments, but at the same time, they kind of just serve in a different plot. Zane is just doing something else for most of Part 2, and Cole is off with the Finders, and he re-leaves to do his own plot point. So for the most part, they weren't even involved in the main stake. I will give them the fact that Season 2 of Dragon's Rising, they are both completely involved in the plots, but at the same time, you could look at it as in Season 2 Part 2, Zane is practically sidelined because he's out of the tournament very quickly, and Cole actually does have something to do in that time, and I do appreciate that, but at the same time, again, he's not exactly involved in the main plot. He almost has to keep up when it comes towards the end of Season 2 Part 2, but then Season 3 is by far one of the worst instances for the two of them, because Cole is completely absent from Season 3 Part 1, and Zane is there, but even though it's meant to be something for him, he doesn't really get much at all. And then Season 3 Part 2, he's just completely missing, and Cole is there, and he has his moments, but it's just not really satisfying at the same time. It goes to show that they've both been the consequence of the abundance of characters when it comes to Dragon's Rising. Neither of them have plots, especially off of the back of the 11-minute era, where Cole has Master of the Mountain, which is fantastic, and Zane has his moments again, but at the same time, he wasn't really expanded on in there either. But the thing is that both of these characters are just there when the writers just kind of want them there. It feels like they don't actually have much to do, but they know for a fact that they can't necessarily get rid of them. Or at least in the permanent sense, because like I said, Zane is not in Season 3 Part 2 whatsoever, and I do think that's the biggest thing of all, and honestly, it goes to show that that solution when it comes to the characters is not exactly valid. Like I said, they've tried ways to get rid of characters to be able to have a more tight and compact cast, but when you just get rid of Zane to go explore the merged lands, it's just not exactly a good way to have it, especially for someone who's been around since the very first episode of the show. But at least when it does come to the core 6, at least the other 4 have actually had something to do. I mean, Jay obviously has this fantastic arc throughout Dragon's Rising, and I think it's absolutely brilliant. They're actually giving him a lot of attention, which I like. Kai has definitely had his moments. In Season 3, he takes a little bit more of a backseat, but Season 2 was fantastic for him. And Lloyd, of course, has had this long-running arc throughout all of Dragon's Rising, so of course Lloyd is getting the attention. Nia is kind of getting away with it, because she also gets the benefit off of of the J stuff, but at the same time, she also doesn't have too much that is specifically for her, so she's kind of getting away with it in this instance. But this is the first category, in my opinion, that shows that there is a character problem, because you have two of the main cast of Ninja who have nothing, one who's kind of slipping away with it, and three that are at least getting something. But honestly, it feels kind of upsetting to say that not all 6 of them have their own amazing plots. The second category for me was always the side characters and the new characters, and I do think the new characters are the biggest thing when it comes down to it. Side characters is kind of brief. The main example I really want to give is Pixel. Of course, they wanted to bring back Pixel, or at least they wanted it back in the Lego sets, and the thing is that they brought her back in Season 3 Part 1 just to literally get rid of her in Season 3 Part 2. The thing is that they bring back a character and they try to give her something only to get rid of her not long after because they just had nothing left to do with her. Honestly, it's such a clear demonstration of they have so many characters that they don't know what to do with some of them, and Pixel is that point. When I refer to new characters, I refer to what is the new ninja, which is of course Aaron, Sora, Wildfire, Frack, and Ryu. The thing is that these 5 characters are all fantastic in their own unique and amazing ways. But the thing is that because there are so many characters and so many plots that they have to go around, the thing is that some of them just get sidelined for just different reasons. Of course, Aaron is definitely getting the most of the lot because he is kind of the poster when it comes to Dragon's Rising. He is the main character they clearly had the biggest idea for. So for the most part, he has been very safe when it comes to the character plot points. Of course, then you've got Sora, who's definitely had a lot over the course of Dragon's Rising, but in Season 3, especially in Part 2, it started to feel almost like she was just there to service the Aaron plot. Of course, for the most part, she has done what she needed to do. She found her true potential, she solved things when it came to Empyrean and her parents. It's just a case of she now just has a little bit less to do, so they're kind of just having her serve the Aaron plot, which you could attribute to the fact that they don't have much to do with her, or more importantly, there are just other characters they'd rather do stuff than her. But the thing is that she at least had something at one point. It's just now she feels like she's almost being sidelined. But honestly, in my opinion, it doesn't even compare to the fact that some of the new ninja are already getting neglected in a lot of different ways. I mean, take Ryu for example. He's been around and he is on most of the posters when it comes to Dragon's Rising. It was always Aaron, Sora, and Ryu, but it feels like nowadays he barely even has anything to do. Again, take Season 3 Part 2 for example. His whole thing was that he was training with Rontu to be able to learn Spinjitzu, and I'm gonna be honest, the scene where he learns Spinjitzu feels like it should be a big epic moment of, oh my god, he's finally done it. But I remember watching the episode and just thinking, he's learned Spinjitzu now. Cool. It was really the indicator for me that Ryu just doesn't get much in the way of plot in terms of Dragon's Rising. Of course, he is much more narrow in what he can have because of the fact he's a dragon, and also because, like I'm trying to prove, there is so many other characters to contest with, but the thing is that Ryu just simply doesn't really get much. Remember, he learns Spinjitzu in Season 3 Part 2. That was a plot point introduced in Season 2 Part 1. It's been so long since the concept of Ryu doing Spinjitzu was introduced, and it took them 40 episodes to be able to do it, just simply down to the fact that he just didn't really get much during all of that time. Honestly, when you put it in that perspective, you realize that Ryu, again one of the poster characters for the new show, truly just didn't get much whatsoever, and is so blatantly apparent by the Spinjitzu plot. The last 2 of the new ninja are definitely in the same place for me when it comes to the character problem. Frack and Wildfire both are honestly really interesting in a lot of different ways, and I think both of their characters are definitely going in the right direction, but it does feel almost like Wildfire and Frack are definitely being boiled down a little bit and also not getting much at the exact same time. Take Wildfire. She was introduced fairly early on into Dragon's Rising, and she's definitely had her moments. She had some fantastic stuff with Kai, and it definitely felt like she was going in a very interesting direction, and it was until Season 2 Part 1 where I really felt like the downfall started to begin. Not for any reason in particular, it just felt like once Kai was back at the very least, her whole thing just kind of went away with Kai. Of course, because instead of Kai, she had Roby, and the Roby stuff is interesting, and I do think it's fascinating to see, and it does make for great moments, but it just feels like they're lingering on the whole thing of Wildfire and Roby being a couple. It feels like she hasn't had too much since that point, and that was season 2 part 2, so she kind of skated the entirety of season 3 just on the Roby stuff alone, which honestly feels just a little bit of a shame. And then when it comes to Frack, he was introduced in season 2 part 2, and he was fantastic in that part. Honestly, there was so much potential, and they set up so many interesting things. I was convinced that we were going to have a Frack and Cole plot between the two of them, and to an extent we get it a little bit in season 3 part 2, but for the most part, again, it feels like Frack was almost in a lingering state throughout all of season 3. It felt like he was just the ninja that was just training whilst the plot was happening, and he would just assist the ninja where he could. Of course, again, he does have his moments, and I do appreciate that, but it does also feel like he just never really had much. And in similar vein to the original cast, it just goes to show that there is inherently a problem with all of the characters being there at the same time, because Aaron is getting a lot of attention, rightfully so, but the thing is that it is at the consequence of Sora just assisting his plot, and Frack and Wildfire being in limbo, and Ryu just being kind of just forgotten about. I mean, it just is a very apparent case of they have their one that they like to write about, and they are trying to write about the others and fit the others in, but it is just a case of they don't have that time to actually do so. And then last but certainly not least is the final category for me, which is the case of the villains. And I'm gonna be honest, we've never had a problem when it comes to villains in Ninjago, but it feels like as of Dragon's Rising, it's actually starting to creep its way into the character issue. We have been introduced to a lot of different villains when it comes to Dragon's Rising. I mean, not limited to Cinder, Dorama, the Mechanic at one point, Raz, Thunderfang, the Forbidden Five. There are so many different villains and so many different setups to a lot of different plot points, and it feels like they are starting to kind of struggle to be able to juggle all of them. You can tell that the priority is Raz. You can tell that Raz is definitely the one that they have an idea for, and they definitely want to get his story correct. And for that reason, I absolutely love it. Raz is one of the best characters in all of Ninjago. There is no denying that whatsoever. But the thing is, and what makes it funny, is the fact that it is at the consequence of all the other villains in a lot of different ways. Cinder was set up as a very interesting character, and a lot of people really do like Cinder. He's interesting, he's funny, he is really good in a fight. Honestly, he is a very solid villain, and he was really cool when he was with Raz. But the thing is that season 2 part 2 basically written him out of the story, and we don't actually have any more of him when it comes to season 3. Of course, there are people who are definitely hoping that he does return, and I do agree with that point, but the thing is that it's very interesting to find that this character that was introduced and was hyped up and was honestly one of the main stakes when it came to season 2 has just kind of just been forgotten about, and there's not really an explanation as to why. In similar vein, of course, was Jordana. I mean, she was introduced in season 1, she has all of the stuff with Imperium, Raz picks her out to be able to continue the plot, and she was a big part of season 2. Of course, in the end, she was possessed by rocks, and then afterwards she disappears, and again, that is kind of proof of concept, but the thing is that she was set up over the course of 2 seasons. She was the right hand to Raz, she was fully with Raz on everything that he was doing, she was honestly a really interesting character, and a great support when it came to the character of Raz, but again, she's just nowhere to be seen, and there's no indication that she's even going to come back. And whilst it's not necessarily been confirmed that they are a villain, there is no other better example than when it comes to the case of the Administrator, a character that has been set up since the first season of Dragon's Rising, and we have been confirmed that it's not really going to be something that's explored within the show. So we have a character that's been built up over the course of so long, and they could have potentially been a villain, and we're just simply not going to get it. We're going to probably get the Administrator reveal in a comic, or in a book, or in just some sort of external media, but when it's not involved in the show, when it's being set up in the show, it's just honestly kind of a shame to see. And honestly, to an extent, I do feel like it is because they have so many other characters they need to contest with. So when you invite a whole new different villain that could set up a whole different thing in of itself, it's just kind of too difficult to manage it at that point. And that's why I feel like the Administrator is not even going to be there. Whether or not he was going to be a villain or not, I don't know. But it does prove that a character that is set up literally didn't even get off the starting line, whereas a lot of the others at least got that. Now, of course, you do have to consider the fact that there is going to ultimately be more villains, and there are so many villains that we have had over the course of Ninjago that do just essentially disappear in a lot of different ways. But for the most part, they are actually kind of solved in their plots, whereas it does feel almost like Cinder and Jordana should have had more. It feels like they should have been more involved with Raz, and just how they were set up, it did feel like they were destined for something more. But ultimately, they were just kind of put to the side for characters like the Forbidden Five, who also felt severely underwritten in comparison to other villains, and in particular Thunderfang. There is just so many cases of villains that just didn't really get too much space for development, for plot, for establishing who they are, because there were just other characters that they needed to do. But this is just proof again that the villains are also now officially becoming a problem when it does come to the characters of Dragon's Rising. Like I said, the summary of this problem is the fact that there are just too many characters. There are so many characters that we have had introduced, and they just seemingly keep introducing more. And I'm not mad at that, because all these characters conceptually are absolutely fantastic. I love them all. It's just I wish all of them got the love that they truly deserved, because in 10 episodes at a time, or in 20 episodes for a season, they have to juggle 6 ninja, 5 new ninja, Pixel, Raz, maybe even Wu as of season 4, and then obviously then you have to look at even more side characters like Alfonso Frohiki. There are so many different instances of so many characters that are just constantly returning in some way, and it just feels like they don't get too much at the exact same time. But what is the solution to that? Because writing the characters out just seemingly isn't really working. Because when they did it with Cole in season 1, with Zane in season 3, the Ninjago fans weren't exactly pleased with that. And honestly, it is for good reason, especially in the case of Zane, where he's just gone really for the sake of it, and he just doesn't have any more involvement in any way, shape or form. At least with Cole's instance, they seemingly were setting up something. And you could even look at it even further. I mean, Nia is missing for a lot of season 2 part 2 because she's out looking for Jay, and that plot also goes nowhere. So how do you fix something like this when writing them out just doesn't seem to really be the answer? And the best thing I can suggest is just simply trim the fat. There are so many different instances of different plot points in Dragon's Rising that you could just simply cut out. I mean, take season 3 part 1 for example. Of course, you have the case of Nia, Kai and Wildfire going after Jay by playing a video game. That plot by all accounts could have been completely cut out because we knew where Jay was throughout the entirety of season 3 part 1. So you could have it as, well, you could keep the plot in favor of keeping the rogue mystery there, but at the same time you could have it so you don't have that entire plot point, and that opens up so much time for so many other different things. Like I also suggested when it came to my video about the Forbidden Five, you could pair up the Ninja 2 specific villains like they did before. Of course, in general sense now, they're just kind of general villains for the ninja team themselves, but back in the day, you would find that there were villains for specific ninja. Mora with Lloyd, Chen with Kai, Zane with Cryptor. The thing is that there are so many different instances of villains being specifically for certain ninja, and you could definitely reintroduce that, especially when you're introducing a team of elemental masters. It does just go to show that it also goes without saying that if they truly wanted to do something with all these characters, they very much could do so. And if you are introducing the characters at the rate that you are, it would go without saying that you would expect them to be able to handle that kind of roster. And I'm not saying every single season, every single ninja needs some life-altering plot development, some crazy new lore for them to have. I'm mainly just saying just give them actually something and make them at least somewhat relevant to the plot. Have every single ninja at least have something to do, because as it stands, like I said, it does just feel like a lot of them get sidelined because they just don't know what to do with them, and I feel like they could if they truly wanted to. But this is where I'm going to pass the conversation along to you guys. Do you think Dragon's Rising has a character problem? Do you agree with my analogy of every single character? Do you agree with my point about the misuse of some of them? Or do you feel like I've misrepresented any of the characters in any way? I would love to know your thoughts on it, because this kind of conversation is really interesting to me. And especially in this case, I would like to know if you think that there isn't a problem when it comes to the characters. Because when I say problem, I don't mean it's this crazy thing that is breaking Ninjago as we know it. I just simply think there's just slight room for improvement, because as much as I do love the show, I can acknowledge when there are just slight things that I would wish would be better. But like I said, I would love to know what you guys think, because I do think the conversation is very interesting, and at the end of the day, it's the point of this channel. But that is about it for today, you guys, and thank you very much for watching. Take care. Okay, bye!